Hey. Yeah. Yeah, you. How you doing? Welcome back to my channel. Let's talk about some banner lords. See you soon. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. That was kind of a weird intro, but I liked it. You know what I mean? Like in a naughty way. Anyways, we're going to talk about banner lords today. I'm really excited about this faction. I think you have a lot more options than you do with most, and they all look so good. I mean, it's kind of weird that all of the females in this faction kind of give you the stink eye, like, boy, who you looking at? But it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice. It's a good faction. Let's have some fun. So first, I want to start off with the rares. I don't think I've given enough love to the rares in my earlier videos, and you should all know that there are at least a couple that stand out in each faction. Maybe minimum one. Minimum one in each faction. For banner lords, it's going to be 3, almost 4, but 3 for sure. And I'll go with the almost 4 first, and that's going to be Steadfast Marshal. I really like his kit. I wish he had more defense. Other than how low his defense is, he is an HP-based champion, but other than how low his defense is and his speed, maybe this was a terrible example. All right, that's why he's an almost 4. So with his A1, he has the possibility of throwing up a Provoke. Great champion for getting some CC out there when you're trying to, again, get back to your cooldowns. We've talked about this before. Having that CC in your kit is going to help you out with Faction Wars so much. But he has increased defense for himself. It grants an extra turn, so realistically, booking this for 3 turns, it kind of becomes a 2-turn cooldown. It helps cool down the rest of his 2 abilities that he has, right? So Covered Retreat, I think, is what really makes him stand out for me. He has the ability of putting Veil on every ally on your team, which can really, really help break up the champions that are getting targeted by the enemies, especially in those later factions levels, when you're going like above 12, 14 or so, and you really have to start paying attention to who's taking the damage on your team. Steadfast Marshal comes in with some clutch Veils on the entire team as a rare, I think is a pretty incredible ability. And pairing that up with his ability to increase his own defense, although it is incredibly low, is better than nothing. If you have him in probably like a tanky, fast, immortal set, I think you could get some really good use out of him, being that he's going to help heal himself up every turn. Lifesteal, I don't think is really the way to go here, since he really only has one ability to attack and get that health back from. He's not going to do like an absurd amount of damage on that A1. It only hits 1 time. And then the rest of his abilities are kind of geared towards keeping him alive and keeping his team alive. But really, really close to being a strong choice for later levels. Now, the 3 I would recommend here have different uses. So Chevalier is a great champion for keeping your team alive. Increased defense and continuous heal on your entire team. He has a high chance at stunning an enemy. I mean, 75% chance on a 3-turn cooldown. If you book him out with rare books, you should have no problem with rare books if you are looking at it in this stage of the game, 14 and up. Even earlier levels, though, just an insane champion, I think, for clearing factions. But having a really high chance at stun, and then his A1 being able to do some more damage, going through shield, going through block damage, if you find yourself trying to kill an enemy champion with those buffs on them, is going to help you out a ton, and he does phenomenal damage for a rare. Later in these stages, especially 21, just a small shout out, we kind of did the same thing for, God, who was it? We did the same thing for Sacred Order with Fenix. Conqueror can be a great champion to bring in if you're having trouble with the allied attack from the boss on stage 21. His A3 has the ability to block revive on those allies, making it so you're only going to get targeted by the boss. The small difference here is that when those champions are down, the boss will gain a block damage buff for 1 turn. However, not really a big deal. Makes it way easier than just getting destroyed by that allied attack. And pretty nice. You can get this down to a 3-turn cooldown, so it's not going to take forever for it to come back up. You can keep it up when you're working on one of those side champions to get them down, and when they get low enough, you just hit them with Conqueror and they won't get back up. The last champion for the rares that I think can be super solid, a lot of people don't use them. I have seen her, though, getting a little bit more playtime, Valerie. Her A1, nothing to, shout home about. It's just a standard hit. But her A2 and her A3 are super, super useful. Her A2 can increase the duration of buffs on your team. So if you have champions that are throwing up buffs on your teams, especially if they're using lasting gifts in order to make those buffs last longer, Valerie can then in turn extend those buffs, pretty much allowing you to keep those buffs on permanently, especially if you're using champions that have cooldowns of around 3 turns or so. Then they will basically continuously put up their buffs. Valerie will extend them if you use her after them with this ability. And she can also decrease the duration of debuffs on your allies as well, which can be super helpful, whether it be a True Fear or a stun or block buffs, etc. And then with her A3, she places a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns, which can be incredibly useful in sustaining your team through the rest of the rounds, through the boss's initial hits, wherever. Now, the only thing I don't like about it is it's not the most massive shield, and it is on a long cooldown, but it can help if you're using other champions, whether they can heal or if they have abilities like, that synergize with Steadfast Martial, for example, that bring a veil to reduce a little bit of damage to prevent them from being attacked. That shield can help extend their survivability, allowing them to get back in the fight, heal back up, get their cooldowns back, whatever they need to do. Moving on to the epics, I think you have some pretty good choices here, whether it be Warcaster for block damage. Unfortunately, you can't extend those abilities with lasting gifts, but you can make Warcaster extremely fast and allow him to go at a quicker rate than the enemy team so that he can get that cooldown back faster and put it back up for when it counts. Now, Azure, Rowan, not a huge fan. They can be useful in earlier levels, but I'm not a huge fan of how they turn out in the later levels. Rowan, if you were looking for a DPS because you really just don't have anybody, she can definitely come in clutch because she does do decent damage. But in my opinion, not the best pick. You know what my options are generally as priority, and that's going to be like a defense champion or someone with HP for their main damage, and then building them tanky and fast so that we can sustain and survive through the fight. However, if you're looking for that DPS, definitely use her. Steadfast Martial is in a weird spot. He's Spirit Affinity, so he's not that great on 21 until he gets to the boss, but his kit, I think, makes up for it. Being that he has an AoE decrease attack and decrease defense is very, very good for this faction, and I think makes him a must-use for this faction as well. His passive helps out a lot by increasing accuracy for any of your allies that don't hit their debuffs. And his A1 hits 2 times and can place a decreased speed, which can really help, again, with getting those cooldowns back, taking the fight on your own terms versus the enemy's turn, slowing down the pace so that you have more control over the fight. The only thing I don't like about him is that he is attack-based and not defense-based, which kind of hurts him. You can build him tanky, it's just he's not as survivable, and he's not going to do as much damage as someone who's, like, say, defense-based or HP-based, but great champion. You could put him in a stun set, a daze set, a taunt set, any number of sets that provide CC, and with that A2, he's going to be able to lock some champions down, especially if he cannot hit his decreased defense. Again, that just allows you more time to bring your other champions in, focus on some other enemy to get them down first, and then cycle back through your cooldowns to get back the trouble enemies. That's pretty much it. I think he's pretty self-explanatory. Most people have him from the Battle Pass. If you don't and you pull him, definitely level him up. Get him to 60. Get him ascended. Get his masteries. He is a really, really good champion. Black Knight. Dude, what a fucking meme. Like, how do you put... I still don't understand this. I feel like everyone knows this, but I still don't understand this. He has an increased defense aura in dungeons. And he's attack bait. I don't know. He's really good for. He does a ton of damage. Knight Errant is one of the highest damage dealers as an epic in this game. So if you have the ability to revive, if you have good deterrents on your team, such as Warcaster, such as Valerie, anyone that can provide shields, keep him going so that he doesn't die, being that he's not defense based, he's attack based, so he's going to get crunched by some of the later enemies. He can put out some DPS, so for sure use him. Throw him in like Savage, Lifesteal, whatever you want to do. Lifesteal would be much more beneficial if you're having trouble keeping him alive. Savage would be a great set to put him in so he just gets that much more damage out. Helm Smasher is a really, really good mastery for him. However, on pretty much any champion, I generally recommend going with War Master or Giant Slayer, just so you have that extra little bit of damage to get through those bosses, to get through those endgame enemies the best way you can. Seneschal, I don't think Seneschal is really talked about too much, but his Perfect Veil and Continuous Heal buff is really strong. It lasts for 2 turns. The Continuous Heal can really, really help keep your team in the game, and it goes down to a 2-turn cooldown. So you can permanently have this up on another champion if they are speed tuned to the same speed that Seneschal is at, or a lower speed even. You could even build him insanely fast and have this buff on multiple people at the same time, overlapping a little bit. And you could also put him in Relentless gear to get this cooldown dropping consistently so that you can just throw it on anyone on your team, get those heals going, get a ton of survivability through the amount of sustain he's giving, the decreased damage in Perfect Veil. Really, really underrated champion in my opinion. Now, I'm not going to talk about free-to-play $50 champions or, Lordly Legionary. Decent, Giant Slayer's better. Really only good if you're working with someone that has heal reduction. So, in my opinion, not a very good champion for Faction Wars. Also, he's attack-based. Oathbound, however, is our last of the epics and a really, really good epic. He has really strong HP. He has really good defense values. Okay speed, not the best. For sure would like to see that higher, but really good for CC and sustainability. He has a 50% chance to freeze on his A1. Pretty strong. He can decrease attack, which is especially useful. You could put him in a stun set. Again, you could put him in a CC set and hit all enemies with this. You can decrease their turn meter, stun them, daze them if you have him in a CC set. I mean, this is a really, really strong ability here by itself, but putting him in a set that synergizes for more CC is going to be extremely helpful. And then to top it off, his A3 can block cooldowns. If the enemy is under decreased attack, that ability goes up in chance, and he has a defense-based kit, so I think that is really strong. He has been on plenty of 21 teams that I built for people that needed that filler, and I think he has a really good kit to help you guys. If you're not using him and you're looking for that 5th person, build him up. He's definitely worth it. Now for the legendaries in this faction are pretty solid. Even with Lord Chumpfart, everyone is pretty good. You have splash damage, you have Sky Piercer, Baron's great. Raglan, if you have Raglan, use her. She is your carry for this entire faction. If you're having trouble and you are using her, just boost her defenses up. Her Revive is on such a low cooldown, she will continuously bring your team up. If you're having trouble on level 21, for instance, and you are using Raglan, bring in Conqueror, use him to block Revive on the enemy allies, and then just continuously revive anyone that happens to drop. You probably won't have anyone drop past that point because she will just continuously heal and boost the turn meter on your team to kill that boss more effectively, but she is insane. If you have her, GG, you won the faction. Now, for DPS, I really, really like Richthof. He's very solid for the waves and the boss because of his poisons. He does good damage all around. I like him. You don't even really need to build him with a ton of attack. You can really just let his poisons do all the work. You can put him in a Relentless set, you can put him in Lifesteal, you can put him in whatever you want, and he's going to do it. You just need to make sure that he has enough accuracy to effectively kill the waves with his poisons. Also, definitely viable to put him in a CC set as well, because with his A1, he can attack all enemies, which is going to give you a strong chance at CCing them. So that's going to be a really, really good pick for the Legos. Septimus, you'll actually see in my video here in a minute that I'm running a double Septimi because I just love him. He's so fun. He looks good. He's got a great suit of armor. He's shiny. He's clean. And he does some sweet-ass damage. So if you have him, run him. I run him because I'm using Raglan. I would not recommend using him if you do not have a revive because he's going to get destroyed. Lugan is insane, actually. Absolutely disgusting kit. You could pretty much auto up to the boss with his kit just because of his block cooldowns and his A2 bodyguard. His A3, just be aware that he will not always use this off cooldown, so you may need to force him to use it manually if you want to get those block cooldowns off. He will tend to go for this first, so just be aware of that. And if you don't know, his A1 will heal the entire team based on the damage that he does and the amount of health he has. So really, really great support champion. And then you got Murder Inc., who is a really, really solid streamer and champion of the game. Has a really great kit for supporting his team, healing up. If he happens to die, the courage and morale boost temporarily on your team to allow them to go even faster. I mean, what more could you ask for one of the most famous players in the game? Black Knight, I feel like, is another super underrated champion. He has... Man, I feel like I don't normally go over this many Legos. I mean, this faction is just loaded. I personally put Black Knight in a Relentless set, and he just destroys this faction. I mean, he will continuously keep everyone buffed with increased defense. He will stack continuous heals on your team. The fact that this is on a 2-turn cooldown, the buffs last for 2 turns, and you can make this proc even more often with a Relentless set is just insane. He is disgusting. If you have him, build him up, get him tanky and as fast as possible, especially in a Relentless set if you can deal with that. If not, just put him in like a tanky speed set, and he is going to pop the fuck off. Alright, now Sethalia, you probably wouldn't really think about using her for this faction, but with her heals, with the fact that she can remove buffs and pretty much fully heal people, she constantly increases turn meter. She is a definitely S tier choice for this faction. Use her if you have her. Just build her as fast as you can and let her do the rest. Now, Cillian the Lucky, I feel like falls into kind of like a really shitty meme territory, but his kit is pretty insane for this faction. He does need to be booked. I mean, you could do it without him booked, but having him booked for these cooldowns makes him so much better, and the extra chance to hit these is just, I mean, it's so much more consistent. So with his A1, you have the ability to decrease turn meter and decrease speed. That's going to work on the bosses. That's going to work on the enemies as long as they don't have, you know, block debuffs on them for decreased speed. But the decreased turn meter is amazing. Definitely want that booked. Block cooldowns and having the ability to spread it is insane. I mean, the stun, he has a really, really good kit. And then paired up with Charmed Life, which has the ability to put a number of these passives on him, is super strong. Just make sure that if you don't have a good amount of support on your team to keep him alive, that you build him tanky. He's totally viable. He's not going to do as much damage because he's an attack-based champion, but he will stay alive and he will continuously decrease the turn meter on the bosses, on the waves. He'll lock them down. He'll prevent them from using their strong abilities. Really, really good champion. If you didn't fuse him and you pull him and you're wondering what he's like, don't worry about these in-game reviews. In fact, never trust the in-game reviews. He can be a really, really, really strong champion wherever you want to use him in the game. And then lastly, Lord Champfart. I don't know what to say. I mean, the decreased defense is super useful. The decreased accuracy and decreased attack is super useful. The fact that he has self-sustain is super useful. I wish he had something that was more for the team. But if you're just looking for that solid 5th fill champion that you don't have to worry about, that your heals or whatever you're sustaining, your perfect veil from like Sineshal needs to go on someone that's getting jacked up by the enemies, you don't have to worry about Lord Champfart. So besides that, I mean, that's the faction. It's a super good faction. Any number of these champions can definitely be used together, and a lot of them synergize super, super well. If you want any builds for these champions, please go down below. Check my Discord. A lot of these champions I have built in there. If you need help with their masteries, please feel free to hit me up in our Discord. We have new people joining all the time. Plenty of people are putting in their input, so you are definitely going to get some answers back. And friendly reminder, I am streaming on Tuesdays and Wednesday nights, as well as Friday and Saturday nights on Twitch. You can get me at the same name, God's Gunslinger, on Twitch. I will have my link in the description below. And as always, I'll see you all next time. Cali GG. Out.